Welcome back. I'm Leo, and this is the third episode of Rediscovering Ashina. Last we left off, I had collected the Shuriken wheel from a mysterious dead figure over there, and we're going to go back to the dilapidated temple where we met our first NPCs to give that to the Sculptor and complete the tutorials. So, first off, I want to show off the antique map, which we can access through the travel screen, which is just a beautiful aesthetic thing that will collect all the places we have been. I can hear dogs. And yeah, this doesn't have much of a purpose, but it's beautiful, and all that mist will lift up once we discover more locations. So let's just go to the dilapidated temple. So this is actually my second take because my timing was really off while I was doing the tutorial, and it was really embarrassing, so I'm doing it again, hoping that it's not going to be as humiliating this time. But yes, to fill you up on what I'm going to do this episode, this is going to be an interesting one. Yeah, it's the usual stuff. It's going to be an interesting one because we are going to... yeah, this is all stuff we already know. This is going to be the one that we actually face our first crossroad in terms of the structure. And I'm going to take the hardest of the roads available to us at this moment and leave a little bit of stuff behind, basically to not get crazy during the... sorry. Oh, poor guy. I apologize. But yeah, I'm going to leave some stuff behind so as to not get crazy for the translation and stuff like that. There aren't going to be as many discussions about the setting, because there just isn't that much new stuff about Japanese culture in this episode. Okay, yeah, I seem to be back in efficiency. But I will cover everything that I skipped this episode in the future one once we get back to this same area, so no worries. So the reason why we're doing this... oh, god damn it. Apparently it resets if I keep him. Well, I didn't know that. I'm discovering new stuff. The reason why we're doing the tutorial is that this is the way that we unlock further Hanbei dialogue. And this is the one where I got really bad. So yeah. Classical stuff. Sekiro's battle system is very different from other Software property because you don't have stamina really. The only thing that stops you from dodging constantly is the fact that there is no reason to, and you're wide open to being cut while you're dodging. Ooh, like that. I had dodged there, just dodged into his sword, and that didn't do anything. Like that, again. I'm not the best dodger, I will admit. I'm used to just deflecting everything that comes my way. Okay.
そこもととの修練だが、そろそろより誠の戦いに即したものも試してはどうか。それがしも殺す気でかかろう。そこもとの修練としてもその方が好ましかろう。どうした？
なぜそこまで？
半分は退屈しのぎ、もう半分はそうじゃな。そこもとの眉間のシワを取ってやりたいのよ。さあ、良いからやるぞ。
So yeah, Hanbei is sweet. And I like that dialogue.
では行くぞ。
承知。
Now, as I mentioned, I did actually read the manga, the special manga about him. Ow. And it's a nice read. It doesn't really reveal much that I didn't already know and that is not present in the game, which is, you know, it's good. It's good that a game does not need to, you don't need to read other stuff to understand what is going on. I think this should be it. Yes.
さすがだな、そこもと。この社には生き現にだからそこの
Is this it for now?
また来るがいい。そこもとの技の試し、いくらでも請け負うぞ。
Okay, yeah. There are going to be more tutorials that we can get from him in the future, and that unlocks the last of his dialogue, I think. So, do we have something new to talk with you?
よく参られました。
Does
司
not...
祭はまだわかります。あなたの体は世の断りから外れているようです。返事あれば。
わかった。
Okay, nothing new from
で
her.
はまた。
And now we discover how we can use the Shuriken wheel.
手に入れた。
人具か。
おう。
忍び義手は牙じゃと言うたが、人具を仕込むことで、その牙は形を変えることができるようになる。仇き盾ならば打ち砕き、素早き敵ならば仕留め撃つ。仕込んだ人具が増えるだけ、敵を殺す術も増えるじゃろう。殺す相手なりの殺し方を持つ。そういうことじゃ。
随分と詳しい。
いかんな。いつまでも血生臭いことを言うておるから、仏の顔も鬼になるのよ。どれ貸してみろ。わしが人具を仕込んでやろう。
I like this little animation of him just working. I think he's blind also, other than not having one arm. The eyes would definitely suggest that, and the way that he's moving. But yes. In this way, we unlock the loaded shuriken, our first ninja tool, I think they're called. Arm tools. The description for the items themselves are usually not very interesting, they're very functional. Yeah, I don't think we have anything else. Heh.
わしが掘る仏はどうやったって怒り顔だ。業深いものはそうなる。お前さんもいつか掘ってみればわかるだろうさ。それで何か用か。
And it's all
牙
stuff.
の形を増やしたきゃ、せいぜい人具を探すこったな。乗りかかった船じゃ。仕込むことだけはしてやろう。
Yes, the prosthetic tools are at the very basis of this game. They're very useful, and there are spirit emblems. Yeah, this is the fuel. As it says, sometimes enemies drop them, other time we just find them around. They're generally, or we can buy them at the idols, as we'll see. Nothing new.
狼殿。
Nothing new.
では
Okay, time to progress. So, I can equip my prosthetic tool. I have 3 slots. For now I have the Shuriken. I will test the Shuriken on the wolves or dogs. Yeah, we can buy them here. And we have the description. Drifting white paper doll. Feelings of remorse are not limited to the hearts of mankind. Such a sentiment may even manifest itself in a fleeting, illusory form. Using certain actions, such as prosthetic tools, will consume spirit emblems. So yeah, they are remorse. I will have to see how that is in Japanese. Right now I don't remember. I think it's a little bit more nuanced than that. So I'm going to try them on the dogs, because the shurikens are the bread and butter, really, of the ninja tools. I don't think I've ever played without them. And they're really useful. So first and foremost... Ooh, hello dogs. As you can see, they just one-shot the dogs. And they make that weird little aura. Ooh, hello dog. That aura... That aura is something that happens every time there is a critical attack against an airborne opponent, and we can do it to opponents that jump around or fly. In case of beasts, it's kind of a thing automatic or something like that, but opponents can also do it against us, which does a lot of damage. And here we can see over there is our next big enemy. And over here we have some pellets, which are always welcome, and the path forward. And that is a little secret shortcut that I will not be doing right now. And there, over there is a hut as well that I will not be exploring right now, because it would just stretch the runtime and give me so many more items, description and stuff like that, and I don't want to worry about that at the moment. We can just skip this guy, or we can just sneak behind him as well. Ooh. He has good eyes. But yeah, we can just jump ahead and ignore him if we want, but I don't want to face him. So let's go. He's a good tutorial guy. Yeah, they finally teach us what were those weird symbols that Genichiro used against us in the tutorial. Gerald Naomori Kawarada. Ooh. Yes, he does that, and his posture recharges. Ooh. Our posture is pretty bad at the moment. Ooh. I'm getting scared. So, I would like to not die again. Yes, I know how to do that game. I would like to not die against this guy. For a couple of reasons. First, it's just, bragging rights. Oh, no, you don't. And secondly, is the fact that dying here would give me more stuff to translate, basically. And I would like to do that later, but I will get what I can do. Come on. Okay, let's do this properly. That wasn't properly. Woo! Okay. Come on. And he does it with a grab. Well, that was satisfying. I'm very happy that I didn't die there. Prayer beads, a first reward for defeating this kind of mini-bosses. A loose prayer bead, offering 4 them at a sculptor's idol will increase maximum vitality and posture. And then our first Gourd Seed, the one that Emma told us about. Seed from which healing waters continuously spring forth. Give to Emma to increase the maximum uses of the healing gourd. The twisted gourd of medicinal water was known throughout Ashina since long ago, but it was the extraordinary healer Dogen and his pupil Emma who discovered the self-replenishing nature of this seed. Yeah, I survived. I might be killed in this next section, honestly, because this game is very unforgiving. Just so much. That was surprisingly loud. But I am happy that I managed to overcome this guy. While I was scouting ahead for this section, he actually killed me. So I am happy that it seems to have become a little bit better. Now, this is another little wonder of level design. We could have skipped him going over here. We can pass from here, and since he was going to be here, if we went around and sneaked past him behind this, we could have gotten a little sneak kill and removed one of his life bars right off the bat. Which is very cool. It's cool that you have the option. You have, you know, the grass to hide in. I tend to be a really bad ninja, and especially the bosses, I like to face them head on because I really like the core gameplay of this game. But you can be very sneaky. Now, this next area, as we can see, there are quite some people around, and if this Swarmas is going to be very complicated, so let's try and be a little bit smart. This guy has a rifle. That makes him dangerous, so he goes first. That guy somehow did not see us. Well, actually, I'm not going to collect gold because I want to show you a little something. So, okay. Whew. Luckily, they're very dumb. Maybe I can escape here. Okay. Damn it. Well, they don't know where I am, which is great. So, I should be able to... Oh, this guy knows where I am, and this guy is big. Okay, good. Whew, that was lucky. That was instead a big mistake. Killed by a rock. God damn it. More translations for me. Yes, this is a bad time for a pop-up game. Woo! Okay. Ironically, now I should be playing much better because I don't have the oh god damn it. That guy just killed himself. Woo! Okay. So, we got 1 bar of that as field, which is good. I got killed and resurrected, so I got to show the little resurrection mechanic, even I really hoped that I wouldn't be doing that in this episode, but whatever. So, the way the resurrection works is that you see the little circle above our health bar. That will fill up every time we kill enemies, and it will fill up completely once we rest at a shrine. we can have 2 of them filled up completely right now. One for automatic resting and one that we can just accumulate by killing people and not dying. And the resurrection mechanic is what makes the rhythm of this game much different than normal games where you just die and you respawn immediately. Because it means that the game still gives you the feeling of being really unfair and you take a lot of damage, but you actually have a lot more health if you have accumulated it than what it looks like. And it makes especially stunning enemies a lot less frustrating because you get a breather in between fighting. So now, for the reason that I haven't been collecting anything. It's not this. I think it's down here. The Mibu Balloon of Wealth. A Mibu Balloon filled with fountainhead water imbued with a blessing of wealth. If one pops the golden Mibu Balloon and prays, those its water splashes upon will acquire more coin for a period of time. Mibu means aquatic life or life born of the water. The Ashina considers the fountainhead water itself to be worthy of worship. So this is, from a lore perspective, a first hint at the local religion of Ashina, and from a mechanics perspective, they are an interesting little thing, because if I use them, and there is gold scattered around, I get a lot more gold than what I would have normally gotten. And I can do that after I kill all of them. I don't need to get, for the gold to actually drop before I use it, for that to happen. And that's, I think, a good reason, ooh, yeah, there is that guy. So before I face that guy. So as I was saying, I think this is the reason why the gold is not automatically collected, so that you can do this little trick, which I think is pretty cool. That guy is different, isn't he? He's not a beast. He's a person, I guess, but a weird person, isn't he? So we can block his attack, but it's not a good idea because it just smashes through our defense and our posture. Do we have any healing left now? Okay, let's try not to die. So the best way to face him is not like this. Is to dodge him. And then he will get really angry. Ow. Okay, almost there. Come on. Okay, angry again. They are really not nice. Poor bastards. I will have a lot to say about them in the future, but for now this is a first meeting of these weird creatures. Like beasts, they don't really drop money. They seem to be human-like but very deformed. They have a kind of creepily childlike face. And they are big. They are really big and they hurt a lot. I'm not playing very well, I apologize for that. I hope that I will get more used about talking and playing at the same time in the future. We can see that the map is just delightfully intricate here. There are a lot of side passages. For now, I don't really lead anywhere new, but they're cool. I will explore them more once we get back here, because now we've got an important little NPC, which we will reach by kind of a roundabout way. That is, I will pass through here, where some beautiful chickens. Let's see if I can get not murdered by the chicken. Wait, so here is this little secret, which is what was probably the secret stash of the people who live there. Guys. And we can hear the sound of a bell.
Oh, Inosuke か、せがれよ。若様を見なかったかの。
せがれではない。
Inosuke、またそのような。そなたはわしがおかしくなったというが、さすがにせがれを間違えるわけなかろう。まあよい。せがれよ、この鈴をそなたに託そう。若様のことを案じ作った守り鈴じゃ。この守り鈴を仏様にお供えしておくれ。
Young Lord's Bell Charm. A bell charm received from an old woman who asked that it be offered to Buddha. Bell charms protect their holders through Buddha's divine protection. If one finds themselves the owners of another's bell charm, offering it to Buddha on their behalf is common courtesy. The sculptor at the dilapidated temple can advise on how it should be offered. This is a very important and very interesting item. And yeah, she's not okay. She mistakes us for her son, and there is another guy who seems to be in a very bad spot over there. If we talk to her again...
我がせがれよ。守り鈴は、ほら、偏屈な仏師がおる、あれ寺があるじゃろう。仏様なら、そこにおられるでな。
Yeah, nothing much new, but I do find fascinating that apparently they just know about the sculptor. Like, it's not a secret. People know that he's there, people know that the temple is there. And who might this guy be? It's not really a big surprise, but...
誰ぞそこにおるのか。
ああ、
その声、いやまさかな。御神、我が名は野上猪之助。平田家の老頭だった。どうかそこのあばら屋の老婆の様子見てやってくれぬか。私の母なのだが狂ってしまい、もはや誰が誰だか分かっておらぬ。
お主の母に会ったぞ。鈴をもらった。
そうか。礼を言う。母はその鈴をずっと気にかけていた。上事のように仏様に備えろと。
So yeah.
先ほどの御神か。母の相手をしてくれ。かたじけない。母はその鈴をずっと上事のように仏様に備えろと。
So a pretty straightforward and telegraphed subquest, really. But yeah, this guy is a son. He's blind. He seems to be dying, honestly. I have no idea why, even though these are all Ashina soldiers, and he seems to be an Ashina soldier himself, why he's just left here to die and nobody helps him, but I guess people just don't have the resources to care about him. There is a beautiful maple tree behind here that I don't think hide any kind of big secret. It's just beautiful, and I will probably talk about this later on. And yeah, we have quite a lot of stuff to go, so I will explore more later in a later episode. For now, I want to go back because we have a lot more dialogues to discover. We got to discover what the blue line filling up means. We got to fulfill the request of this old woman and offer the bell to the Buddha, and we died and came back to life, which is pretty weird. Yes, if we unlock 4 prayer beads, we can enhance our physical attribute, which is that vitality and attack power. The unseen aid thing is still at 30%, and I hope to show that to you guys later. As late as I can, at least. But yeah. Hanbei the Undying. So, the main thing that I discovered in the manga, which I can tell you now, is that Hanbei was, new training option, which I think will be the ones that unlock the last of his dialogues for now, but I'm not going to do them now, next episode. Hanbei served under General Tamura, the guy who got killed in the initial cutscene, and I will talk more about that later on. For now.
変わったことがあったのですか？
ああ。
どのような？
俺はひとたび死んだ。だが巫女様の声が聞こえ、気づけば再び生きていた。
ひとたび死に、今再び生きている。ならば、それは快晴でしょう。
快晴。
九郎様の流因の巫女の力と言われています。快晴の力を与えられた者は死してなおよみがえる。幾度でも。
バカな。
はい、おかしなことです。ですが現に起きている。また変わったことがあれば知らせてください。快晴の力が何も見返りを求めぬとは思えぬのです。
So yeah, the power of resurrection is known, at least to Emma, and it comes from whatever Lord Kuro did with us that also generated this weird mark we have on our face. And it's not without price, so I will try not to die as much as I can.
狼殿。
And we also have a Gourd Seed.
ひょうたんの種とはこれか。
はい。それをこちらに。種をひょうたんに植え付けます。よし。これで薬水の傘が増すでしょう。
妙な薬だ。
妙ですか。悪い気はしません。貢献があれば奇妙と思うことでも勇んですべし。それが我が師道元の教えですので。
そうか。
ひょうたんの種を見つけたならばまた持ってきてください。薬水のかさ増しをしましょう。快晴の力は九郎様の流因の巫女の力と言われています。快晴の力を与えられ幾度でもまた変わった快晴の。おや、何やらチリンと。
ああ、この鈴だろう。仏に備えろと渡された。
あなたにゆかりのある鈴でしょうか。ならば仏師殿と話してみてはどうですか。仏のことならばあの人が詳しいでしょう。
Okay. So that was one down, well, 2 down with the Gourd Seed. And now we have the bell and the mystery bar filling up.
なんだ。
お前さん、勘が戻ってきたようじゃな。ちっとは忍びらしくなってきたように見える。とっておきな。
Shinobi Esoteric Text, a book of secrets that detail a variety of techniques employed by shinobi, grants the ability to learn shinobi-style skills. Within the text are the innermost secrets of the shinobi art, such as attacks performed in the air and hiding one's body to avoid detection. Such moves could never be practiced by samurai. So this is cool because it opens the fact, as we'll see, that the skills that we will learn come from these specific items, these texts, and this will be important in the lore. One of the greatest things that I found on my own with the help of my friend, that we played the game together and discussed about the story and everything together, was through one of these. It's going to be a long time coming, but yeah, it's important to remember that these are actual physical objects and not just props for skill progression.
これは
忍びの技じゃ。侍には真似できぬ忍びの戦う術が書いてある。まあどうするかはお前さん次第よ。戦う術など忍びだけでもあるまいって。
Yeah, that was an esoteric or combat style. Yeah, we can acquire more of this text and they will unlock more skills. I will see. I will show them first before I do other stuff. So if we go back to the idol, we can actually acquire skills. Yeah, I will explain all of this when it will become relevant. Now, we could already learn the Whirlwind Slash as an ability, but I will make the decision of waiting so I can get this one, because this is incredibly important and very cool. As you can see, all the abilities actually have description. I think for now I'm going to only translate these either when I acquire them or when we unlock them, because as you can see we cannot see them now, but maybe just when I acquire them because they're going to become a lot very quickly. There are some really interesting stuff hidden in these descriptions, so they're not to be underestimated. And now for that damn bell.
チリンチリンと鈴が鳴いてるな。
この古い鈴のことか。老婆が仏様に備えろとそう言っていた。
その鈴、見覚えはあるか？
いや、覚えはない。
鈴の方は違うな。お前さんに何やら言いたいことがあるようじゃ。
なんだと？
鈴を備えてみるといい。そこにある優しい顔の仏様は、わしの彫った仏とはわけが違う。誠の仏師が彫られたものだからな。
Yes.
わしが彫る仏をお
Okay,
前
we
そ
got
れ
that already.
ではな、また。
So this is the second time that it is hinted that we know more about these people and the bell than we seem to realize. The Inosuke, the guy who was dying, seems to recognize our voice, and now the sculptor told us that the bell seems to recognize us. But what could this mean?
目をつぶり、鈴の声を聞いてやるといい。 その鈴の音が呼び覚ますじゃろう。眠っちまってるお前さんの古い記憶を。
Yeah. Surprising. I had no idea something like this would happen, like a new area. Some pallets, which are always useful because I think I was kind of running out. And yeah, it seems to be 3 years ago, but we still have our prosthetic. So it's not like we were reverted to how we were 3 years ago. And this nice little idol tells us that we are in the Hirata estate, Dragon Spring. And with this little cliffhanger, I think this is where I'm going to be stopping for today. We did get a bunch of stuff. I think I left something behind, but it's fine. We're going to be going back to that area in the future after we explore this new place where something is on fire. And oh yeah, we can already check that the Hirata Estate is a different place. But yeah, I'm going to go back there and explore the other place that we can go other than this one in a future episode. But for now, I'm going to stop here and introduce all the translation for the dialogues we had and all the new items that we found and stuff like that. So until next time, have a good evening, everyone. Welcome back. This episode, I must confess, was kind of scaring me in especially the translation regard, because of the way that I'm doing translation for now is that I need to find video sections or something like that with Japanese subtitles to translate the dialogues. And the further I go into the game, the harder it is to find reliably what I'm looking for. So I was pretty scared about translating the dialogues and stuff like that, but turns out this was actually one of the easiest episodes for now to translate. The dialogues are all pretty straightforward and well translated already, and aren't that many cultural things that I want to talk about, but in exchange for that I actually found some new things. After I stopped playing, I realized that I had left behind a drop in the area with the big guy and all the guards, well, the samurais. So I decided I didn't want to waste some time and just kind of to re-record and go back, so I just went back and found more things than I expected, honestly. The first thing was just the drop that I was looking for, which is this Litecoin purse that was hidden away in a bird's nest, which was just a little cute thing, not very relevant. But I also found some more interesting things. The second thing that I found was almost an accident. Like, I was trying to record footage of me killing one of the big guys with a sneak attack to show off that they can just die in one hit if you catch them by surprise, like other normal enemies. And it dropped another Mibu Balloon other than the wealth one that we already found during the normal playthrough. This one being a Mibu Possession Balloon, whose description reads almost exactly the same. It just specifies that it's a blessing of fortune rather than wealth, and that it's green. But first and foremost, it is interesting that this big guy drops this. I will get more into details of what that means after we discover more about what these balloons actually are. But it also gives us another interesting translation, because these balloons have fascinating Japanese translations. They were quite fun to go through, so I can't wait to get into them. And lastly, and this was really unexpected, I found a new eavesdrop dialogue that I never heard before. I think during my normal playthrough I just didn't have the patience for triggering the conditions that were needed to have this dialogue, because you needed to wait for these two guards to meet with each other, and then you got the dialogue as they chatted between each other. And this actually acts like an introduction and like a little bit of a teaser for what's to come later. So let's hear it for now.
この戦、果たして勝てるものかのう。どうにも悪い予感がするのじゃ。
何を弱気なことを。両親とはいえ、一心様はご健在。源一郎様の弓も見事なものじゃ。加えて、鬼行部様もおるではないか。
おう、鬼は行部正隆様か。確かにあのお方と鬼影が共にあれば、大手門が抜かれるなど考えられぬわ。
Now, this is an important dialogue, I feel, for a couple of reasons, as it underlines some important details about Ashina's conditions overall. The first is that it specifies that apparently the only thing that is keeping the morale together at this point, and that is giving hope to these poor soldiers, is the fact that they have on their sides, like, heroes, people who are so famous and feared that they can actually hope that having them on their side will be able to survive against whoever the invaders are. The second thing is that apparently Genichiro is mainly famous as an archer, so the fact, like, his huge bow during our fight beforehand that he never used wasn't just for show, it was like, that's his main thing, and when he fought us with the sword, that wasn't him at his best, apparently, because it's not his specialty. And lastly, it introduces us to Gyobu the Demon, or Oniwa Gyobu in Japanese, who apparently is guarding the gate up ahead. There is somebody fierce enough that these soldiers agree that as long as he is standing, no one will be able to breach the gate. This dialogue is interesting in translation. It's one of the ones that I found with the most differences, which makes it a bit annoying that it's also the one that I had the most difficulty translating, because I couldn't find subtitles for this one. I had to just base my my translation on the knowledge of Japanese that I have, which is not the best. So I got a lot of things, but there are probably more that I'm getting, and some of the details that I got might be wrong. I don't think they are, but they might be, because I'm not that confident on my Japanese. So let's get into that. So the first difference in the translation is a minor one of tone, where both the soldiers seems to be much less formal in Japanese, where the first one, for example, does not say, "I fear we will not prevail." He says something more like, "I have a bad feeling about this." And the second one is not like consoling him with "we will be fine," as much as scolds him for being a coward. And the second one is that the second time that Gyobu's name is mentioned, where in English he just says Gyobu, in Japanese we actually get his full name, which is Oniwa Gyobu Masataka, with Gyobu Masataka being probably his name and surname, and Oniwa being his nickname. Oniwa literally means Field of Demons, so that's where the nickname of Gyobu the Demon comes from. And his surname, Masataka, is written with the kanji of filial piety and government, so kind of establishes the fact that he's a servant of, well, not the main government apparently, but we will get more into him where it will be relevant later. And this is a great segue for me to go into the translation of the rest of the characters, because as I introduced before, they're not as interesting as the dialogues that we got in the past, so I want to get them out of the way firsthand before we move to the more interesting parts of this episode. So first off is our old friend Hanbei the Undying. And while his dialogues really don't reveal much, I wanted to talk a little bit about what I discovered by reading his manga. Some of the details in that manga are references to things that happen later in the game, so I will come back to them in the future. But for now, the main thing that I discovered is that he was a samurai at service of the big general guy who Ishin defeats in the opening cutscene of the game. He was a servant of the main government and got kicked out of Ashina during the rebellion, Ishin's coup. And he was Undying way before then. He got recruited into the army as one of the main aides of that general because he was immortal, so he did not grow up as a samurai, for example. He became a samurai out of basically usefulness and the fact that he could not die, so he was a very powerful soldier. But even if they had an immortal soldier in the midst, the government faction just couldn't stop Ishin, and Hanbei could not prevent his master from being killed, so he just stayed alive because he cannot die all this time without a master or any other reason of existing except maybe one day taking revenge on Ishin, which he tried to challenge after the death of his master and got immediately killed off, and when he resurrected, Ishin was nowhere to be seen. And after some other stuff that we'll get to in the future, he found his way to this temple and he's been kind of waiting here since he has nothing else to do, really. And the last thing about him that I want to talk about, because his dialogues are overall very accurate and well translated, is there is a callback to the frowniness that I mentioned when I translated his dialogue in the last episode, where in English he goes, "You seem to have a lot on your mind," and in Japanese he's commenting on how frowy, how much we are frowning constantly. And now he says that one of the reasons he's helping us is to kind of get rid of that frown even a little bit, which I find is really sweet and kind of tells of Hanbei's attitude in general, of how he just wants to help a little bit, but he has no hope to make a big difference. So yeah, just for that little bit of sweetness, I wanted to point this out. Next, before moving on to Enma and the Sculptor, I want to get done the other small or short translations that we found, or the dialogues that we found. Firstly, for Inosuke and the Old Woman, for which I want to start, and Nogami Inosuke is a common name, so I have no idea if that was the reference to something. If it was, I didn't catch it. And their dialogues are generally pretty accurate. There isn't much difference between English and Japanese there. The only ones that I could find are the Old Woman. When she first sees us, she doesn't even ask if we are her son. She just immediately goes, "Ah, Inosuke, that's you." So doesn't even hesitate to recognize us as her son. And the second thing is that she's much more formal when she gives the bell to us than in English. In English it's just "take this bell." In Japanese she says, "I entrust this bell to you." And lastly, I want to remark that during my very sad death, during the little cutscene that plays the first time he dies, in Japanese, Kuro does not say "take my blood," he more specifically says "become one with my blood," which is a much more edgy and powerful way of phrasing it. We will see later if and how this phrasing is relevant, but for now it's there, it's pretty obvious, so I wanted to point that out. Next we have Emma the Physician, whose dialogues are overall pretty accurate, I feel. But there are some small but significant differences here and there, so I want to quickly get into that. The first ones are all into the dialogue where Wolf tells her that he resurrected for the first time. And it starts when Emma asks him, did something change in you? She doesn't ask in Japanese, she doesn't ask, did you notice anything different? She specifically notices that something is different, and she asks what that is, which is, you know, a little bit more natural than did you notice anything different? The second thing is something that really puzzles me because I have no explanation for it. When Wolf describes what happened to him, he specified that he died once, heard the Divine's voice, and then was alive a second time. And Emma repeats this thing where he died once and was alive a second time. I have no idea why they feel the need to specify how many times he died and was alive. Maybe this is where the Shadows Die Twice originally came from, but it's there, it's different, so I wanted to underline it. The last one is just a little bit of a pet peeve. It's not a big difference, but it annoyed me in the way to translate in English. So, Emma describes the resurrection in English as a power of the Divine Hair's dragon heritage, as if there is the Divine Hair, which is the Kuro's title, and the dragon heritage is like the name of a superpower that he has, or something like that. While in Japanese, the resurrection is a power of the Divine Hair of the dragon heritage. That is, Kuro's full title is Divine Hair of the dragon heritage. This is a very small thing, but I don't like that in English they kind of split the two things like they were separate. And lastly, this is a part of a dialogue that really puzzled me in English, where they are talking about the gourd and the seeds, where Wolf says that it is a strange medicine, and Emma's reaction is that she takes no offense at that, which was always a little bit odd to me, and honestly, Japanese did not solve that very much, but it did enlighten me a lot more on the next sentence, because Wolf's word for strange is not wrong, like that word means strange, but it has the specific connotation of being unexplainable, unnatural, or like beyond the scope of science and stuff like that. Which would make a little bit more sense of why she would potentially take offense at that, because it's calling her credibility as a physician into question, in a way. And her answer is more specifically that what Dogen taught her is that as long as it is effective, then a medicine is cause of celebration, even if the way it works is mysterious / impossible to explain. Like the kanji is used in the sentence, a phenomenon that science cannot explain, for example. So what that tells me, more specifically in Japanese rather than how it is put in English, is that Dogen was not a scientist, or, well, he was not a doctor that cared much for why or how certain things worked. He was very goal-oriented, so as long as something worked as a medicine and helped people, he did not care for how it worked, and Emma seems to follow that ideology, so she has no idea why the healing gourd and the seeds work the way they do, but she knows that they work, and therefore she will help us with them. Last but not least, we have the Sculptor, and a lot of small details, sometimes influential and sometimes not really, just curious details that I found in his translations. The first of which are all in the dialogue where we just brought him the loaded shuriken and we fitted the first Shinobi prosthetic. The very first thing is that in Japanese he specifies that it's not the fitting more tools that will allow us to slay enemies in more varied ways, it's finding them, which is a very, very small detail, I realize, but it makes more sense since we have very limited number of tools that we can fit at once. So yeah, it's just more coherent with the mechanics, I guess, to specify that it's finding them and not fitting them. Secondly, I just find it very funny how this is another great example of Japanese wolf using the least amount of words humanly possible for every situation. So, in English, the sentence that is translated as "seem you know this prosthetic very well," which sounds a bit suspicious, almost confrontational, in Japanese is him just saying the words "surprisingly well informed," and that's it. He just says these two things. It's just a comment, and it can be interpreted in the same way. Like I get why the translator translated it in that way, but it's just funny to me to underline again and again how little this person really talks at all. And lastly, for this dialogue, the sculptor specifies that it's not just his sculpture's appearance to become more demonic, is the Buddha's appearance, which again is very small of a difference, but I thought that it would be good to point it out anyway. Later, when he talks about a heavy karmic depth, in Japanese he is much less formal. In English, they translated the sentence as "thus is the fate of those who owe a heavy karmic debt," which sounds very resounding and highbrow, while in Japanese he just very matter-of-factly states that those with a heavy karmic debt will all end up doing the same. So another small difference there. And lastly, when he's speaking about the techniques, the shinobi techniques in the tome, the esoteric tome that he's given us, in English I got the feeling that they were going for the idea that samurais cannot use these techniques because it would be dishonorable to do so. While in Japanese I got the feel that it was more like they cannot do them like in practice. The specific translation for the sentence is not "cannot be performed," it's more "cannot be imitated by a samurai." So it feels more like the samurai just cannot do them because they don't have the right training to do them. And this is further underlined later, where in Japanese he doesn't say whether to use them or not, like there is something questionable about them. He says what to do with them is up to you. So it's more like use them however you wish. Like I will just give you this knowledge and you can do with it whatever you want, but it's not a question of like, will you or won't you use the forbidden knowledge that I'm giving you? So yeah, that was all for the sculpture and for the characters. As I said, not that much of interest overall, but some interesting tidbits. And now I can move on to the other item translations, but before that, the cultural context and a little bit of other small details. So, starting from the maple tree that is found near Inosuke and the old woman's house, the maple, which is known as Kaede or Momiji in Japanese, is a very recurrent tree in Japanese poetry and art and stuff like that. Its meanings as a plant, as a symbolic plant, are of important memories or beautiful change. It is very connected to autumn specifically, and both of these meanings can be very well connected to what is going on here. For the memories part, we will see more when we explore the area that we get into thanks to the bell that the old woman gives us, and the beautiful change can be interpreted in a very ironic and kind of black humorous way, considering where the maple is used in the game. It is also present, for example, in the initial cutscene, where the first thing we see when we boot up the game are maple trees, maple leaves falling into the water during the end of the rebellion, so being connected to Ishin winning against the central government and taking Ashina back. And now we see it again here when the Ashina seems to be on the brink of failure. So yeah, there is that. Also, and this is something I'm not entirely sure yet, I will see later, this is the third reference to a specific seasonal symbolism that I found in Sekiro as of yet. We have the Sakura tree or the cherry blossoms, which are connected to when we resurrect, and the first time we see Wolf, there is a cherry petal flowing off of us, which is very much connected to spring. And then there is the moon viewing tower where Kuri is held, and the moon viewing is connected to summer as a practice. And so I have no idea if this is significant in any way, but there might be something about the seasons going on, which, are cyclical and everything. So not exactly to be excluded from a software game, but I will come back to this if I see more things in the future that convince me of this link. Next are some other smaller details and translations here and there that I want to get out of the way before going into the big stuff. First, the antique map in Japanese is just called the old map, and there is a lot written on it. There are a lot of kanjis, but they are so stylized that I generally cannot decipher them. I have no idea what they are, so I do not know what is written on the map. I'm assuming they are the names of the locations as we know them, but I have no way to be sure, unfortunately. Also, the quick travel has an in-game name, which is the Buddha Passage, which is a neat little thing, but is going to be more relevant later because the word used here for passage is used in another couple of places in the game that we will see in the future, so I do think it is somewhat relevant, even if not fundamental. Then the General Naomori Kawarada, whose name is again common, so I have no idea if it was the reference for something. In Japanese, the title is a more specific one than general. It is something along the line of Samurai General, and it's basically the position of someone which is just below the greater general, the one that actually controls all the military in a region organization. So this one was somebody who directly reported to the military leader of Ashina, which we can suppose at this point that it is Isshin. And lastly, with the Dragon Spring Hirata estate idol, in Japanese it is specified that this is the Dragon Spring Riverbank Hirata estate, meaning that Dragon Spring is probably the name of the river, which is something that could be intuited also in English, but it's good to have more confirmation of this. Also, and lastly, for these little details, the Hirata family was the most prominent of the 4 cadet houses serving Ashina in history since 1384, and historically they fell together with the main Ashina clan in 1589, well before the events of the game takes place. So this is another part where, in this fictional history, the Ashina clan lasted much longer than the historical counterpart. Next, I want to talk about those items that kind of bridge the gap between the cultural details and the item translations, which are the spirit emblems and the prayer beads, both of which are cultural items that in English are just not treated as such. And they both have interesting things in their translation, but mostly in what they actually are in context. So, the spirit emblems are objects in Japanese called katashiro, which is a word that basically is composed by the kanjis for shape and replacements, and so it's just a replacement for a shape or a form. The description in Japanese reads more accurately: just a white katashiro. If you have any regrets, those feelings might take the shape of a phantom, and this phenomenon is not limited to human beings, with shape here which uses the same kanji as what is used in katashiro. So what are these things? A katashiro is a form of yorishiro, which is an object used in religious practice to store a kami. And I will talk more about kamis in future episodes, but if you have no idea what they are, you can think of them for now as deities or spirits of animistic belief, which are like at the center of Shinto religious practices. And yorishiros are used in Shinto rituals, and katashiros specifically, so the spirit emblems, are used in ritual and they stand in the place of a person. For example, a common use is for it to be a vessel to a sin or a curse or another spiritual ailment affecting a specific person, which is then symbolically transferred to the katashiro, and then the katashiro is purified in place of a person, for example by burning it or letting it float away in a stream, as flowing water has spiritually purifying properties in Shinto belief. As such, these items contain the regrets of dead people. They stand in the place of dead people and they absorb the negative energy. And the shape also implies that in the fiction of the game they are supposed to be purified. They're not supposed to stay there, like they're made to be expanded and purified. This for me means that we not only take on the regrets of those we kill, but that we use those same regrets to fuel our most outlandish actions. For example, the Shinobi prosthetics, which therefore acquires a semi-living state, like the miraculous thing that a prosthetic can do is because we are kind of using this negative energy as fuel that comes from dead human beings. And in this way, we either purify these regrets, which seems to be kind of the most optimistic option, or more likely we absorb them and we take them on ourselves as the next replacement. Because I don't feel that we are doing anything to specifically purify them in what we would be considered the proper way in a Shinto ritual. The prayer beads are kind of an opposite to the katashiro in the fact that instead they are items which are imbued with positive energies instead of negative ones like regrets and negative feelings of loss from the dead. The translation of the description for the item is overall accurate. The only difference is that the Japanese specifies that they are torn and not loose, so this is a torn prayer bead. But other than that, it's mostly the cultural use that I find interesting. So the full item is known as an ojutsu, and it is a common praying tool used in Japanese Buddhist worship. The total number of beads on a full ojutsu is supposed to be 108, but that can vary depending on the specific sect. As these items are used to aid in the uttering of mantras or the name of a deity or other forms of these kind of prayers, it is said that over time they can become imbued with the divine powers that come with the prayers. And so maybe the main reason why collecting this makes us stronger is that we absorb the divine favor that comes from this act of worship over time. Now, moving on to the item translation proper, before getting to what I consider to be the real protagonists of these episodes, which are the Mibu Baloons, there are a lot of small things here and there in the items that we found that I want to remark quickly. So, starting with the simplest, the loaded shuriken in Japanese is just called a shuriken. Everything else is fine, it's just for some reason the English translator wanted to add that loaded part of it. Then, the Young Lord Bell Charm. The description is overall very accurate, the only difference is kind of in the last line, which is a bit more humorous to me in Japanese, because it reads, "If you happen to be a sculptor at a ruined temple, you would certainly have great knowledge in the correct method of offering." Which, yeah, sounds a bit tongue-in-cheek to me. Then there is the Shinobi Esoteric text, whose description is again accurate overall. I just want to remark that the Japanese term for esoteric text is densho, which is a text that has been passed down through the generation and contains the secret techniques of, for example, a particular style of martial arts, or the rituals of a religious sect, and so on. And so it is to be used only by initiates and never to be shown to outsiders. And lastly, there is the Gourd Seed that we found. The description of this is, again, accurate overall. It seems to me that in Japanese it is a bit more clear that the what Emma and Dogen did was that they examined these artifacts, these cultural artifacts of the healing Gourd that was passed down through the generations, and they discovered that the source of its miraculous powers was specifically in the seeds that they contained. I believe that these gods were kind of a very rare species or mutation, because we will see that we encounter other forms of this later in the game, and so I don't think it was just the one. But this is an interesting aspect for me, because we are told previously that Emma is the one that created this, right? This was her creation. So what I think happened is that the gods itself were known before. They were like these legendary things that could happen to gods. It wasn't like a species, it was something that could randomly happen thanks to these miraculous seeds that sometimes appeared. And what Emma did is that she learned how to not exactly mass produce, but at least modify these gourds, maybe by growing them specifically, or maybe by just learning how to add more seeds into pre-existing ones. And so she can do this thing that nobody else can do, which is make the volume of water that a single gourd can produce increase by adding more seeds to it, specifically. Now, finally we get to the balloons. The Mibu Balloon of Wealth that we found during gameplay, and the Mibu Possession Balloon that I found afterwards by killing the big guy. The fact that the big guy was carrying one of these is going to be relevant later, but I will get to that when we discover more about them. So, starting from the cultural thing, I haven't found any practice, any religious Japanese practice that includes these kind of balloons filled with water, like splashing them to pray. So I think this is an original method of worship unique to Sekiro's settings. And the translation is fascinating, not because there are any big changes in it, but mostly for the terms that they use, which have a lot more nuance in Japanese than what they have in English. So starting from the names, which are not wrong, but the Japanese version are a lot more down to earth and simple as names than their English one, because the Mibu Balloon of Wealth, for example, is the Mibu Balloon of Sen Gathering or Money Gathering, and the Mibu Possession Balloon is the Mibu Balloon of Goods Gathering. And these do not feel like the correct religious terminology of these things that are used in religious rituals in Ashina. This feels like folk names that people give these tools as they are part of just everyday life. Going into the description then, the first line is overall correct with two little differences. The first is that the Japanese specifies that these are not filled with a blessing per se, but a prayer. Which is a very minor differences, but still. And the second, which is very important, is that here in Japanese the terms for wealth and possession are actually used, but these are even more esoteric and highbrow than in English, because the characters used are super specific and antique and more used in Chinese than Japanese. I have no idea how to pronounce them correctly. And like, this denotes that these are kind of the more religious, occult terminology for what is actually happening using these balloons, which seems to be used by everyone very normally, but also seems to have this deep religious significance within the religious system of Ashina proper. And to conclude, the last lines of the description, which are the same in both items, are very interesting to me in Japanese. Unfortunately, I have no idea where the word Mibu specifically comes from. I don't know if it is a portmanteau of some kind or a play on words in Japanese. Unfortunately, I cannot really decipher that. My Japanese is not good enough to determine if that's the case. But the way that is explained in Japanese is basically the same, but a bit more specific. It says that Mibu means aquatic life, and it indicates something that was born from the water, more than off the water. So it seems to be indicating life that kind of spontaneously originates from the water and which is ascribed kind of this spiritual religious significance that is not explained, either because, the science was yet not advanced enough, or because it's just supernatural and there is no pragmatic explanation for what is happening, which was a little bit, this kind of things is connected to, for example, why stagnant water in Shinto belief is considered to be bad, because stagnant water produces parasites like mosquitoes and illnesses and stuff like that, which wasn't understood how it happened. It just kind of sort of appeared spontaneously from the water, from the stagnant water in ancient Japanese beliefs. So I think it's connected to that, but in this case seems to be with a positive acception, so not the bad life of like diseases and mosquitoes and bugs and stuff like that, but more general life springing forth from the water. And then at the very, very end of this very dense description is the reference, which in English is that the fountainhead waters are worthy of worship, but in Japanese it is specified, it's not just generic worship, it's specifically pilgrimage. So the act of pilgrimage is important in the religious practices of Ashina, and it is something that is done. It's not clear if it is done by normal people, by religious officials, stuff like that at this point, but it is how I believe these balloons are made in the first place. People go into pilgrimage to the fountainhead waters, wherever they are, and they fill these balloons with the waters there and with a prayer, and then these get either mass-produced and shipped to the population, or you make them yourself during the pilgrimage, or you kind of store them around and you pop them when you want that boost of good fortune or something like that, which is very cool. It's a very cool setting, kind of detail. And yeah, this description was incredibly informative to me on the religious practices of this land, and in English there is all of that information is kind of there, but there is so much less into it than in just the way that it is phrased in Japanese, and that's fascinating to me. And that was it for this episode. Thank you very much for staying until the end. This one took a lot longer to produce than I had hoped for, but life kind of happened, so I hope I will be able to be quicker with the next one. I also very much hope that you enjoyed it. This one was an interesting one in terms of the kind of work that I'm doing, where I go into very in-depth analysis of stuff that I found, and I think we are getting closer to a point where all of this is going to start to pay off, and all the early references that this game gives you, if you pay attention to these kind of details, are going to become more and more relevant, and to kind of create connections that will reveal a lot about the setting and the story and the characters, more than what can only be intuited by following, well, on a superficial reading of it, I would say. So yeah, hopefully you're excited for that as much as I am, and I will see you in the next one. Have a good time until then. Bye bye.
狼よ、我が血と共に生きてくれ。